your portfolio. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.
You've worked hard and saved for retirement, but remember, it's what you do with that money that really matters. How will you ensure that you wring every nickel out of your Social Security benefits? Could you pay fewer taxes in retirement? And how and when will you withdraw money from your IRA or 401k? Welcome to Secured Retirement Radio with Joe Lucy of Secured Retirement Financial. Joe's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and has nearly 25 years of helping people just like you. This is where you can count on straightforward and objective advice on how to make your money go further in retirement. And now, here's your host, Joe Lucy.
So, the other day, I am doing this research on Google. And what I did is I searched for the words planning for retirement. And there were 289 million results. I mean, you can't make this up. That's a real number. There were 289 million articles, blogs, videos about investing for retirement, and there's probably another 289 million different options about what you should and shouldn't do. Now, not only would it take you an absolute lifetime to shift through all these results, much of the information I was finding was outdated, misleading. It's flat out wrong. Good morning, I'm Joe Lucy, Certified Financial Planner. Welcome to Secure Retirement Radio. Joining me in this week's episode, we have Sam Andrews, we got Dylan Malberg, and today we're going to set the record straight about what's fact, what's fiction, when it comes to planning and investing for your retirement. Now, the truth is, there's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution to any personal, financial, or retirement issue. So you need to be careful when you're doing your homework, because something that might be touted as the be-all, end-all solution for any specific issue could actually end up being the exact opposite of what you really want to do. So coming up on today's program, we're going to talk about 5 common retirement planning myths that no longer stand a chance against the challenges that you face in this world's retirement, plus the strategies that are working today that can help you retire successfully that you may not be aware of. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Sam. The first retirement myth that we're going to cover this morning is one that we actually, if you've longtime listeners to Secure Retirement Radio, we talk about very often, almost weekly, because we feel it's one of the biggest opportunities that we have right now. And that first retirement planning myth is that your taxes will be lower in retirement.
Exactly, Dylan. And, I think a lot of people think that potentially their taxes are going to be lower in retirement, but that's really not the case. We got to pay taxes on our IRA, our 401k withdrawals, taxes on Social Security benefits, investment income, and many more.
Well, you guys, this is the number one lie that we've been told as generations, right? We've been told, go back to 1980-something, 1990-something, you started sacrificing some of your paycheck. You took some of that money, you put it into this account that your employer had. It was a 401k, maybe it was a TSA or a 403b. It could have been the thrift savings plan. It could have been it may be just a regular IRA, but we were all told the same exact lie. And it went something like this. We want you to take some of this paycheck that you're getting, and we're going to put it into this account, and you're going to be able to get a deduction on your tax return. In fact, once that money gets in the account, it's going to grow, and it's going to compound, and it's going to do wonderful things. And many of us are looking at these account balances, realizing that while that portion of this story is exactly the way this is played out, what was also shared with us is that when we took this money out, remember, you were told that you'd be paying less tax on this money. You were told that the money would come out and you would be at a lower tax bracket. And we're 10,000 Americans are waking up each and every day right now finding out that that's not the case. In fact, the money we're taking out of these retirement accounts, we could be substantially paying higher taxes. We've lost a lot of deductions. The homes are free and clear. Kids are out of the house. All these different factors come into play where we may not be able to do that. And when I'm starting to look out on the horizon here, and I don't have to look that far out, I'm not talking about looking out 10 years, 15 years, 20 years like we used to. We're talking about where do we think taxes are going in maybe the more near term. I mean, we got President Biden on just this Wednesday talking about substantially changing taxes. Now, of course, he's only targeting those that are making real big incomes, right? The reality is that some of the proposals that are there, the elimination of the capital gains, raising capital gains rates, things around the estate taxes, we can't, the math doesn't add up. We can't just raise tax on the rich to pay off $6 trillion of stimulus here. And we got to start looking at what we can do with our own retirement planning to make sure that we put ourselves in the best situation possible.
Yeah, and there's a few things we have to recognize. And one, the current tax code that we're under is set to expire January 1st, 2026. We're going to be under a new tax code.
That's right? Best case.
And that's written in the law. That's there. We know that. The other thing that we do know is that the tax code is also written in pencil, right? And that's what we're kind of seeing is what, Joe, what you just talked about is we're a couple strokes of a pen away from changing everything substantially. So we look at, we have the conversations of, I'm not one of those rich guys. I'm not going to be included in this. Well, that's just this year. You talk about all the spending. It's got to get paid for from somewhere. If it's not this year, it's next year, it's 10 years from now. What can you do with your plan around your retirement to make sure that you are not going to be in a situation where taxes are going to be higher in retirement than you initially thought?
All right, Dylan, and I think we've got an opportunity right now. I mean, we've seen the lowest taxes that I think we've seen in the last, 50, 60 years. Now is the time to start looking at this, and you want to make sure that you're working with someone that is taking taxes into account.
Well, a lot of times, and we've said this quite a bit on Secure Retirement Radio, when we start transitioning from this accumulation time, when you're in your 30s and 40s, yeah, you've got trade-offs about whether or not you're taking the family vacation and staying on site on Disney, or maybe you're going to figure out another way to get to Orlando and drive in every day, or whatever that is, stay with some family. We've all had trade-offs to make. But now, when we start looking at some of these potential trade-offs where all of a sudden we lose control of certain assets. If you're in the golden decade between 60 and 70, it still seems like it's a long ways off to age 72. But at age 72, we are required distributions have to start coming out. And the amount of tax we pay on this money could be far more than what we think it would be if we're looking at it today. When you look at your retirement balance, don't just think of that 401k balance as all yours, because you've got a silent partner here. The silent partner is the Uncle Sam. And if we aren't starting to look at how Uncle Sam's going to treat these assets as they come out, what the tax rates are going to be, well, then we really aren't looking at retirement planning. In the accumulation years, it's about how much can I grow the account to be. As I start taking this money out for retirement, it's how do I take it back? How do I make it tax efficient? How do I make it last a lifetime? How do we start to do this in a better way? And wealth accumulation is important, but it's not at the compromise of taking back and living on the lifestyle of income you want, and hopefully finding yourself in a position to pay less tax. And the only way that occurs is with purpose. Because most people don't realize that the taxes are lower today than they've been in over 40 years. And many tax experts and economists are all agreeing on one thing. This is all about to come to a screeching halt. Massive tax increases, they're probably right around the corner, and that's why I want to make a very special offer this morning just for the listeners on today's program here at Secure Retirement Radio. You can learn how you can reduce, even eliminate, taxes on your retirement with a secured retirement look-forward tax analysis. It's fairly straightforward. Let me explain how it works. We gather some basic information from you, then we're going to take it back to our lab, and we'll determine some tax-saving strategies that are best suited for you and your tailored specific situation in retirement. We'll sit back down with you. We can do that virtually. We can do it face-to-face. We'll share strategies with you, and we will show you exactly how much money you can save. Now, I'm not talking about some simple deductions that might just save you a couple bucks here. I'm talking about real tax-saving strategies that can save you tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement. The customized analysis is free. There's no obligation. But I'm going to ask that you give us a call right now at 952-777-8838 to get your secured retirement tax analysis. Let us show you some tax saving strategies can potentially save you tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the window of opportunity here is closing fast. So don't wait. 952-777-8838. That's 952-777-8838 to get your secured retirement tax analysis.
Coming up next, why following the 4% rule in retirement could be the fastest way to run through your entire life savings far too soon.
That right there was Dylan Malberg. I got Sam Andrews joining us this morning, and I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. More with Secure Retirement Radio in just a few moments.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio. You want to know how you could get even more income when you file for Social Security? Learn how in a free report, the Social Security Decisions Guide. This free report is full of the strategies that could help you get even more income when you file for your Social Security benefits. It's from Joe Lucy of Secured Retirement.
You safely withdraw every year in your retirement. How do you ensure that you don't withdraw too much and end up running out of money at the wrong time in your retirement? Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. I've got Dylan Malberg. I got Sam Andrews. We got a full house here in our St. Louis Park studio. And today we are talking on Secure Retirement Radio about, we're setting the record straight on what's fact and fiction when it comes to planning and investing for your retirement. I did a Google search. There's literally millions of different ways you can do that. And so much of the information out there is outdated, not accurate, outright wrong. So we wanted to focus here this morning on these 5 myths and making sure that we set the record straight on fact versus fiction. Coming up in this segment, why a 4% rule, this rule of thumb that we've been hearing for generations, why that can cause you to run through your entire life savings far too soon.
And in our last segment, right, we talked about how taxes, they're probably not going to be lower for most retirees. With this 4% rule, how is that going to come into play?
Well, and the 4% rule is something that, and Joe, you talked about generations, right? Whether you got in the industry in 1985, 95, 2005, we've all been told this 4% rule is kind of this rule of thumb of retirement income planning. And we have, a couple of things to look at is, well, it was originated back in the early 1990s. A lot of things have changed over 30 years. So, Joe, why don't you talk a little bit about how we started, how we got here, and why it might not be the best way to go about putting together your income plan?
Well, if you aren't familiar with this 4% rule, what it really is this. It says that when you retire, you're going to retire at 66, let's say. You look at your account balance, and then you take 4% of that. That 4% number over your account balance is what you could safely withdraw and actually increase it slightly every year for inflation and not run out of money. So it was a real quick, easy napkin type math rule of thumb that your advisor at XYZ big box brokerage firm or mutual fund company could say, here's how much money you can take out of your retirement account. Because keep in mind, up until this point, many families were just accumulating money. So it's about getting the money into the retirement account. Well, then the question started saying, how do I get the money out? What's safe? 4% is what came up. Now, here's how. There's a gentleman by the name of certified financial planner out of Sacramento, California. His name is Bill Bangan. And Bill Bangan in 1993 is looking around and he's going to these conferences. He's talking to colleagues. He's talking to clients. And everybody, remember back in the 90s when they used to say you could get 10% every 10 years in the market? They said you could get 10% returns every 10-year period of the market. So there was a whole lot of financial advice going on at the time saying, hey, look, you can take out 7%, 8%, 9%. As long as you're getting 10% returns on your money, well, take out 8 or 9% of the returns and, well, your money should last. You're just spending the growth. Bill Bangan wasn't buying it, so he did some research. He rolled up his sleeves, and he started analyzing the market going back from 1926 all the way through 1976. And he started playing with the calculations, and what he came up with was a portfolio that he found was this ideal. The porridge too hot, the porridge too cold. Nope, this is just right. And he said you need 60% of your money in stocks, equities, and 40% of your money in bonds. And then based on his research, if we took your money over every 30-year rolling period of time from 1926 going forward, 1926, 1955, 1927 to 56. So he takes that 60-40 blend. What was the markets doing? And he found that if you took out 4%, boy, your money's going to still be there. 96% of the time, you'd still have money left over. This is great. Now, the problem is it's contradictory to what everybody else was saying. Everybody else was saying 7%, 8%. Remember, you're going to get 10% on your money every 10 years, so you can take out more. And Bill's like, no, that's not the way this is going to work. So he does it, he proves it mathematically, and now we have a new standard, this 4% rule. Mutual fund companies loved it. It can now teach somebody on the call center how to tell you how to take out your money. 4%'s the number. The big box brokerage firms all loved it too, because now I can take a rookie advisor and tell him how to take your money. The problem is this. Back in that period of time, going 1926, 1976, think of what interest rates were. Remember that house you bought prior to Ronald Reagan coming in, and you had that double-digit mortgage on it? Well, if you're figuring that 40% of the portfolio is in fixed income, earning 6%, 7%, 8%, well, that's 40% of the portfolio. And now when I look at my checking account and I say that I'm earning less than 0.5%, if you're lucky, I realize that if 40% of my portfolio is in bonds that are no longer earning 6%, 7%, 8%, boy, maybe we should relook at this. So a gentleman by the name of Wade Pfau, P-F-A-U. Wade Pfau, who is part of the American College, which is where you get certified financial planning designation. In fact, when I went through the courses to get my CFP, they were telling us 4%. Wade Pfau says that's not probably the case because 40% of the portfolio is no longer getting the same returns we were. So he redoes the math, and he reduces the interest rates to what we're getting, and what he finds out is that half of the time, 50% of the time, if I'm taking out 4% on my returns, 50% of the time, a coin flip, I'm going to run out of money. And I'm running out of money because 40% of my money is not growing like it needs to be. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. You're thinking, well, then let's get rid of the fixed income. Let's put it all in the S&P 500. You know when you do that? It still doesn't get us home. In fact, if you want the most money for the kids someday, statistically, that's really the only concern, then put it all in the S&P, put on the blinders and forget about it. But the problem is this. When it runs out, when it breaks down, you're dirt broke at age 80. And if you're broke at 80, there's nothing worse that I can think of than being chock full of life and being broke. So Wade Pfau redoes this math. You know what he finds out? 2.4. 2.4% is what we can do. You got $1 million, take out $24,000 a year. Required distributions are 40, by the way. 4%. So we got to start rethinking about this. And if you're going back to what you're reading on the internet, of all of these results, as I started Googling how to retire in retirement, and we find out that there's 289 million results, articles, blogs, videos, all telling us how we can retire and what we should and shouldn't do. And all of a sudden we find out that most of this information is not only outdated or misleading, it's flat out wrong. Retiring is different than accumulating. Most clients hire us here at Secure Retirement Radio because, number one, they want to make sure they can maintain their lifestyle. Nobody wants to retire at a lower bracket. Number two, let us show you how you can substantially reduce taxes. The third thing is wealth accumulation. Most of us want to continue to accumulate wealth, but let's not do it at the compromise of income and taxes. That's why this morning on Secure Retirement Radio, we're talking about 5 myths that you need to understand as you get ready to retire.
Well, you talk about this 4% rule, and the 50% of the time that it works out, great, it works out. But the other part of the coin is when it goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong, really fast. And if you're, bringing your family on an airplane and they're telling you got a 50-50 shot at getting to wherever you're going, you probably would think twice before jumping on that airplane. So why should your retirement be any different? Making sure you're working with someone that's going to be looking at not just how can I grow your investment, grow your wealth, but how can I make sure that your retirement is going to get to the destination that you choose.
Thanks, Dylan. Just so you know, Dylan is talking about this airplane trip because he knows that I'm nervous about flying this afternoon. I'll be off next week. We're going to have Dylan and Sam running the show. But, growing your money in your retirement savings, it is far more challenging today than it ever has been before. Now, you may not realize it, but the safest way to grow your nest egg right now is by reducing taxes in retirement. After all, the less money you pay to Uncle Sam, the less money you pay to the IRS, the more money that you have to spend on you and your family in retirement. That's why I'm making a special offer on this morning's program here at Secure Retirement Radio, just for today's listeners. Now, you can learn how you could dramatically reduce, even eliminate, taxes in retirement with a free retirement tax analysis. Now, here's how it works. We just gather some basic information from you, and then we will take it back to the lab, and we will put it through the system, and then we will sit down and we will show you the best ways suited for you and your tailored situation. We'll sit down with you. We can do this virtually. We can do it face-to-face, whatever you prefer. But we'll sit down with you, and we're going to share these strategies with you, because if you can see exactly how much money you could save, well, then you can make your retirement more successful. Now, this isn't not some simple deductions like your CPA is doing for you that saves you a couple bucks. We're talking about life-changing numbers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to ask that you call right now. If you'd like to get the secured retirement tax analysis, then give us a call right now at 952-777-8838. The opportunity to save your money in taxes, I think it's about to run out. So you don't want to wait. Give us a call right now, 952-777-8838. Schedule your secured retirement tax analysis, 952-777-8838.
You've heard that delaying your Social Security benefits is a no-brainer. But could this strategy end up costing you money? We'll share the surprising answer when we come back.
It's Sam Andrews there. We got Dylan Malberg here as well, and I'm Joe Lucy. I'll coming at you from the Secured Retirement Radio studio right here in St. Louis Park, and back in just a few more minutes.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio.
Find us on your radio at AM 1130 and FM 103.5. Stream us on iHeartRadio. And now find us on, hey Alexa, play Twin Cities News Talk on iHeartRadio.
Getting Twin Cities News Talk station from iHeartRadio.
Thanks, Alexa.
From the Cremation Society.
Should delay filing Social Security as long as possible, because every year you delay, the benefits increase by 8%. It's a no-brainer, right? Well, unfortunately, it's not the whole story. Welcome back to Secure Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. I got Sam Andrews joining me this morning. I got Dylan Malberg. We got a full house here in our St. Louis Park Secure Retirement studio. But what we're doing here today is we're setting the record straight on what's fact versus what is fiction when it comes to planning and investing in your retirement years. Coming up in this segment here, a contrarian strategy that can help you get even more income when you file your Social Security benefits.
Exactly. And in our first segment, we talked about that first myth, which was lower taxes in retirement and how that's probably not going to be the case. Our second segment, we talked about that rule of thumb, that 4% rule, and how just using that doesn't give us a good chance of our money lasting.
Well, and that 4% rule, taking your account balance at retirement and just starting with 4% and increasing it slowly over time and hoping that money is going to be there for you. You're right, Sam, with today's low interest rate environment, plus the real threat of increasing taxes, I think both of those myths have been shattered. Dylan, what's the third myth we want to discuss here on this morning's Secure Retirement Radio?
Yeah, we've all heard this myth that you have to make sure that you're always waiting until age 70 because that's what you're going to get the biggest check. There's the 8% increase, but what a lot of families maybe don't consider is all the other things that come into play when you file for Social Security. There's the first part, which is just mathematically how do we get the most, which is why everyone just, husband, let's both get to 70, we'll get the most out of it. But until we start taking into consideration how the taxes? What other assets do we have? How's our Medicare premiums be calculated? That's where there might be situations where it makes sense to file before age 70.
Well, so here's the thing. Conventional wisdom has always said that you wait as long as possible. The other side of this coin has always been take it as soon as you can. Of course, the third factor is, well, you take it at full retirement age. That's when the Social Security Administration says that you should be taking your benefit at age somewhere between 66 and 67, right? Well, what about at age 63, 64? How about 68, 69? How do you do the math here? Because a lot of times what we'll see is we'll have somebody in our office, and they've already done a lot of due diligence on, a lot of homework on this. They've got their spreadsheets, and they'll bring it in, and they'll say, I've calculated all this out, and if I take it here and my spouse takes it here, break-even's at age 83, so we're going to take it like this. And the problem with this is this. The problem with that thinking is this. It doesn't calculate taxes. It doesn't calculate the real possibility we're going to see future taxes. It also weights the reality that Social Security by itself, there's not one of us here right now that would ever have to pay tax on Social Security if it's the only source of income we need. It's when other sources of income hit the tax return. Pensions, rental income, required distribution income, all of these things now all of a sudden start to create additional tax. So the spreadsheet approach doesn't take into account taxes, doesn't take into account the nature of Social Security being a tax-efficient source of income. It also doesn't start to look at hidden taxes, these phantom taxes like extra Medicare premiums. I know some of you are starting to get those letters right now from Medicare saying you get to pay more than your neighbors because you were better at planning for your retirement than some. Social Security is a complex question. It's how do you take it? It's one thing that 90% of us as Americans have a option to we've been putting in a substantial 6.2% of our income. You self-employed folks, 12.4 has been going into the Social Security slush fund. And there's 2,800 rules around Social Security that the IRS and the Social Security Administration has to go through with you. Getting an answer just off the internet isn't necessarily the way. And in fact, 96%, that's the number that they're telling us that the average American, 96% of us are getting our Social Security benefits wrong, and it accounts to $111,000 of extra income we could have been taking. And if I do a quick Google search and I say Social Security calculator, you're going to get 500 of them up there, and they're all going to tell you the same thing. Because of the new tax rules, or the new way Social Security's been done since 2016, you should both wait till age 70. And that's what we're saying. That's a myth. We got to be careful not to fall into some of these traps, because if we aren't ignoring if we're ignoring taxes, we aren't looking at Medicare, we aren't looking at the tax, you're going to get this stuff wrong unless you're working with somebody that understands how to bring that all together.
Exactly, Joe. And I think that alludes back to what we always say on here. We got to look at maximizing or optimizing that mailbox income. For most families out there, Social Security is going to be a big piece of the income that they're going to need in retirement. So we need to be looking at their unique situation and customize a plan around.
Yeah, and you mentioned the mailbox. Think of, again, that income that's going to be hitting the checkbook each and every month, regardless of what's going on in the whims of Wall Street. And you think about mailbox income, 30, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was, almost everybody had a pension. There was Social Security. Well, now we're at today, if you're lucky to have a pension, work for a company that has it, or, government work or whatever it is, they're just not as much out there. So it's even more important to make sure you're working with someone that is going to make sure that we are optimizing this benefit that's available to you, to make sure that statistically it is going to make sure your money is going to last as long as you do.
Well, yeah, and if you're in that golden decade between the ages 60 and 70, for the most part, we probably have been working knowing that we weren't going to have these large pensions, right? We knew that. They started eliminating those in the 70s. Unless you work for a government agency or 80% of us have to rely on our own savings for retirement, not necessarily the defined benefit plans that we used to have. And those of us that do still have a pension, it probably isn't going to pay as much as your folks were getting from their pensions. It's now on us. And replacing that, making sure that we're getting enough mailbox income that hits the checkbook each and every month, regardless of what's going on Wall Street. Ignoring if you're ignoring how Social Security plays into this, if you're just taking it at face value, man, you are leaving this mailbox income on the table. You got to make sure it's not about just maximizing, because maximizing, I can show you the calculator says you wait till 70, but when you bring in all the other factors, taxes, the efficiencies of this, that it's back to, if there's inflation protection, all of the different things, that now it says that maybe what we want to do is make sure that we tailor our Social Security assumptions to our own specific situation. The only way that happens is by sitting down with somebody that's going to, first of all, bring out a tax return. I know Social Security is an income, so why do you need my tax return, Joe? Well, because if we look at your tax return, then I can show you how that Social Security is going to play in with all the other factors, like required distributions. Are you going to be paying IRMA, this income related to Medicare adjustments amount, because you just didn't get this part right? And that's going to the Social Security administration. It's not going to, they aren't financial advisors. They aren't going to look at your check, but in fact, they're never going to ask you even what's in the 401k, because it's not what they do. They can only tell you how to take the most out of your Social Security today. And unfortunately, what I'm finding is that a lot of investment strategists, folks that really just focus on the mutual funds and the investments of this entire planning, well, they might give you bad advice too. They might say, wait till 70, it's going to get you the most, or take it right away. Might not be there. What you really want to do is look at all the different strategies. Should I take it at 62, 63, 64? Let's put it all together. There's over 256 different options, and then let's look at your own situation. Because if you have made an average or above average income throughout your career, so many of the traditional rules for filing Social Security, they don't apply to you anymore. For example, that rule of thumb, delaying till age 70, ends up costing you money. That's why when you consider the impact on taxes, required distribution, Medicare premiums, spousal benefits, your net income ends up being a lot less if we aren't making sure we get this right. That's why we're going to make a special offer just for you, the listener that's joining us here today on Secure Retirement Radio. I want to show you how we can get even more income when you file for your Social Security with the free customized Secured Retirement Social Security analysis. The analysis shows you thousands of options on how to file your Social Security. It's going to pinpoint the exact time that you can file for your benefits and get the most of the income. And it also considers all these other factors like taxes, required distributions, Medicare, Social Security. The results are oftentimes shocking. Now, some advisors probably are going to charge you $1,000 for something like this, and we're not going to charge anything. We want to make sure that we're bringing you value. If you have not already filed for your own Social Security or your spouse's, if there's a Social Security benefit that has not been filed or claimed yet, then I'm going to offer for you this morning a free customized Social Security analysis that you can only get here at Secure Retirement Radio and by calling 952-777-8838. Filing for Social Security, it might be one of the most important financial decisions that you're ever going to make in your lifetime. That's because hundreds of thousands of dollars are at stake here. So don't take the risk. Give us a call right now, 952-777-8838. That's 952-777-8838.
Coming up in our final segment, why you can no longer rely on the 60-40 rule for diversifying your investments.
At St. Andrews, I got Dylan Marberg joining us in the St. Louis Park studio. I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. More with Secure Retirement Radio in just a few moments.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio.
Glenn Beck, weekdays from 9 to 11 on Twin Cities News Talk AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.
And if you think that these words mean nothing, you're wrong.
And on iHeartRadio with your smart speaker.
You want to know how you could get even more income when you file for Social Security?
Are literally 289 million search results. There are 289 million different articles, blogs, videos about how to plan for a retirement, and there's probably 289 million different options on what you should or shouldn't do. But unfortunately, much of the advice, it's either outdated, misleading, it's flat out wrong. Welcome back to Secure Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. I got Dylan Malberg with me. I got Sam Andrews, and we're setting the record straight on a lot of these facts, the fact versus fiction when it comes to retirement planning, these 5 different myths that I think everybody needs to be aware of as before you retire. Don't find out too late after you retired. You want to make sure you get this right. So coming up in the final segment, myth number 4, myth number 5. Myth number 4, we're going to talk about this magic number, why it doesn't really mean anything to you when you're getting ready to retire. Plus, we're going to talk about the Goldilocks asset allocation, which might just be right for you or not.
And as we're talking about trying to bust these 5 common myths about planning for retirement today, the 4th myth that we're going to cover is this we call it a magic number myth, right? I need $1 million before I can retire. We probably get that question or one of 2 questions multiple times a week, right? How much do I need to retire? And I'm not going to retire until I get to this number. And ultimately, really what it's about is what's the right number for you? It could be 100,000, could be 10 million. Everybody's different. You have to make sure you're looking at what's the best for you and your family.
Well, and keep in mind that there's so many different. It comes into mailbox income. How much money do I have that's going to hit the checkbook, regardless of what's going on Wall Street? Those of you with pensions have a lower number than somebody that doesn't. Somebody that has a higher Social Security benefit or is willing to bridge out to a higher Social Security benefit are going to be able to get by with a lower number. Mismanagement of this number, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong, and that's why, when you're thinking about how do I take my money back, how do I make it tax efficient, how do I make it last a lifetime, has to be something that's tailored, customized. You have to have somebody that's looking beyond just the investment strategies in the portfolio, but really looking at how to bring in income planning, reducing taxes, grow the wealth, yes, but not at the sacrifice of those first 2 areas.
Exactly, Joe. And I think, again, it's not necessarily how much you save. There is no magic number out there. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can list off a number of celebrities that have had more than millions of dollars. Nicolas Cage, Mike Tyson, Gary Busey, Larry King. I mean, the list is a mile long.
And if you are not looking at a customized approach, if this is all just cookie cutter, if you're trying to get your investment advice off of Google, I think you're going to find of those 289 so many different strategies that are out there that are outright either misleading, inaccurate, outdated, or outright wrong. That's why we're talking this morning about 5 myths. We're taking the lid off of 5 myths that we oftentimes hear in our offices here at Secure Retirement Financial. Myth number 1 that we talked about, that taxes are going to be lower in retirement. We know that's the number 1 lie. Most of us are finding and waking up right now finding out that our taxes are going to be higher as I take money out of my retirement accounts than when I put the money in. Myth number 2, this 4% withdrawal rate. If you just take the balance of your accounts when you retire and take it and multiply it by 4%, that should last you a lifetime. And with low interest rates, that no longer works. That's an outdated myth. Number 3, delaying Social Security till you're both 70 is an outdated myth. Just as bad as maybe taking it right away at 62. You need to look at a plan that optimizes your Social Security benefits. This last one, you just need a certain dollar amount. Is it $1 million? Is it $5 million? What is your number? Well, the reality is that it's far more complicated than just having a number there. It's about looking at all the key factors of retirement planning to make sure you get this right. How am I going to take my money back? How do I maintain my lifestyle? I've never met anybody that wants to reduce their lifestyle in retirement. Number 2, how do I substantially, possibly sometimes saving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes? Do I have a tax plan in my retirement planning? Or do I just have a wealth accumulation strategy like so many families do? Nothing wrong with the wealth accumulation here, but let's not do that at the sacrifice of the other 2 areas, income planning and reducing taxes. Dylan, what's the last myth we wanted to cover this morning?
Well, the last myth is looking at this 60-40 rule. Is this way to automatically get diversification. Maybe you've heard of the 100 minus your age. That's what your allocation should be. And a couple things. One, every situation is different going into it, so that's not necessarily true. That's the standard. You mentioned earlier in the show, Joe, they could teach a rookie advisor, here's how you automatically get them to where they need to be, right? Everyone's different. Every situation is where it needs to be. And the other consideration we have to bring into fact is, where's fixed income right now? Is that really the right spot to be? Are there other alternatives? And is my advisor looking at that for me, or am I just stuck in this basic portfolio with everybody else?
When I was growing up, my dad was in the service until I was 13. At 1980, we're moving back to Minnesota. Well, I remember my parents having a conversation with my uncle about the mortgages they were taking out. And I remember my uncle talking about how he had it was a big old mortgage with a big old balloon. And I'm like, what is all this? I'm 13. It's at that age where you can start to have some of these conversations that's no longer just adult, but really understanding it was, do you remember that? You remember the double-digit mortgage you had? I mean, could you imagine that today, looking back from that time to today, that you'd be paying, that you could take out a mortgage at less than 3%? Well, think about what that has done to the rest of the fixed income out there. We had an environment in the 1980s that the interest rates have dropped. I mean, not always, but, for the trend has definitely dropped. And here we are, dropping interest rates to the 10-year Treasury, 1.6%. Where are interest rates going? If interest rates go up, it's going to have a negative impact on your fixed income. The portion of your portfolio that's in the bonds, that total return bond fund that you might have, guess what? There's going to be a headwind. And that 60-40 blend of stocks to bonds, are you looking at other alternatives? Because retiring and growing your retirement accounts is far more challenging today than I think it ever has been. You may not realize it, but the fastest, the safest way to grow your nest egg right now is probably by reducing taxes in your retirement. After all, the less money you pay the Uncle Sam, the more money you get to keep and spend on you and your family. Request a secured retirement tax analysis this morning. The number to do that is 952-777-8838. That's 952-777-8838. We aren't talking about just some simple deductions on your tax return. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, sometimes more when it comes to lifetime savings. It could be the best thing to do for you and your retirement planning. The number is 952-777-8838 and get a secured retirement tax analysis. That's all we have time for this week's show. We'll be back next Saturday. Actually, Sam and Dylan Malberg will be running the show because I'm going to be on vacation. That's all we have for this week, though. Thank you, Sam Andrews. Thank you, Ryan Dillon. I've been Joe Lucy, and we'll be back next Saturday with more Secure Retirement Radio.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio.